with a bit of history, then it's really weird. I don't know if you guys are hearing me, but I'll start with a bit of history, and then I will use a part of a speech of, of a former US president, Eisenhower, and then I'll finish with my own opinion and how the military-industrial complex works today. The military-industrial complex is basically a very powerful triangle of the government, the military, and the industrial sector. So if you are ready, I will begin. After the Korean War in the early 1950s, manufacturing companies realized that the most profitable work of the industrial machine was weapons. These companies argued, and accurately, that military work was more profitable, and in those days, it generated more jobs. As weapons production increased, the manufacture of autos and electronics shifted overseas, and so did the production of other civilian products. Consequently, weapons became an even bigger share of the nation's factory output. In 1961, outgoing US President Eisenhower gave his famous farewell address, warning against the perils of the MIC, the military-industrial complex. So I'm going to deliver the part of that address about the military-industrial complex, and then I will carry on with my own presentation. Now I begin Eisenhower's address. So remember, that was in January 1961. A vital element in keeping the peace is our military establishment. Our arms must be mighty, ready for instant action, so that no potential aggressor may be tempted to risk his own destruction. Our military organization today bears little relation to that known by any of my predecessors in peacetime. And it's different from the times of World War II or Korea. Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry. American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, they could make swords as well. But now we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security more than the net income of all United States corporations. The conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, that is, economic, political, and even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development. Yet, we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals. The goal is that security and liberty may prosper together. The military-industrial complex has been largely responsible for the sweeping changes in our industrial military posture. It's also been the technological revolution during recent decades. In this revolution, research has become central. It also becomes more formalized, complex, and costly. Today, a solitary inventor, for example, tinkering in his shop, is overshadowed by task forces and groups of scientists in laboratories and in testing fields. In the same fashion, the Free University, which was historically the fountainhead of free ideas and scientific discovery, has experienced a revolution in the conduct of research. Partly because of the huge costs involved, a government contract becomes virtually a substitute for intellectual curiosity. The prospect of domination of a nation's scholars by federal employment, project allocations, and the power of money is ever present. Now I will end Eisenhower's address here, and I'll carry on with my own presentation. So let's try and understand what this whole thing's about, the military-industrial complex. Just picture a triangle, a very strong triangle: the government, the military, and the economy, so the industrial sector. The defense companies, so arms makers, sell on average 80% of their products to the government and 20% to foreign buyers. The defense companies bid on contracts from the Pentagon, and moreover, all the domestic sales and the foreign sales must be approved by Congress, one of the two houses of Parliament in the United States. As a result, defense companies try and get as much support as they can in Congress, and they have adopted a very smart strategy to do that. There's one thing that every member of Congress supports, and that one thing is jobs in their home state. And so big companies spread their operations across as many states as possible. By doing so, they can maximize the number of legislators that want to support their projects, regardless of their political party. Those major companies, those major arms makers, they also have subcontractors, sometimes thousands of subcontractors. So you can imagine how many jobs are at stake in the whole country. The strategy is called political engineering, and those defense companies are scary good at political engineering. To give you an idea of the size of the arms industry, the next generation of US fighter jets, so the planes, right? They cost $115 million each. $115 million each. And the project for those new fighter jets, it supports 146,000 jobs across 46 states. 146,000 jobs in 46 states. So parts of the plane are produced everywhere in the country, and that gives the arms makers support from both Republicans and Democrats. Let me show you the depth of the strategy. There's a procedure called concurrency, and concurrency complicates things. Concurrency is when a product goes into production before all the tests are done. So that's intended to speed up job creation, because the sooner the production starts, the sooner jobs are created. So both Congress and defense companies are inclined to strike a deal quickly, to make a deal quickly. Of course, some can call that concurrency, and others would certainly call that blatant corruption. As I said, Eisenhower warned against this 60 years ago, in 1961. Nowadays, the military-industrial complex is far too strong and far too interwoven in our economies. As Obama would say, it's too big to fail. And if you think that this obsession with arms sales is mainly an American phenomenon, think again. Although political systems vary slightly, the same mechanism is at work in countries like Spain, France, and Germany. Spain and France, for instance, they sell weapons to Saudi Arabia, knowing full well that those weapons are being used on thousands of starving civilians in Yemen. I'll end my speech right here. Thank you.